Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. The city clerk will now note for the rolls that all council members are present. It is our tradition to begin our meetings with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, as we experience the season of the COVID-19 global pandemic crisis, we all have become creative and innovative to continue serving our community. Tonight's meeting is being conducted virtually. All of our city council members and our staff are joining us electronically. Members of the public may watch this meeting online at burnsville.gov/meetings or Comcast channel 16 or 859. If you would 372-8299. You may also speak by joining us at zoom.us/join. More information is available on the meeting website and in the council agenda packet. Please note there is an audio delay if you are watching us on TV or online. So if you speak, please mute your video broadcast first. The next item on our agenda is our announcements, and we have one proclamation. Our announcements have to do with all of our upcoming meetings. We have meetings scheduled for Tuesday, May 5th at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesday, May 19th at 5:30 p.m. We have a work session scheduled for Tuesday, May 12th at 5:30 p.m. We also have a special work session that will be held after this council meeting to have the council discussion regarding priorities related to COVID-19 pandemic. A special work session is scheduled for Monday, May 11th at 4 p.m. to conduct interviews for Advisory Commission. All meetings will be held online during a health emergency while city buildings are closed to the public. We have one proclamation this evening, and it is for Earth Day and Arbor Day. Whereas Burnsville has taken great pride in the quality of our natural environment, including the beautiful shade trees and native plants that provide many essential services to the community and enrich our lives in many ways. Whereas we need to practice safe environmental approaches in managing our forests, lakes, wetlands, and open spaces. And whereas Burnsville promotes development that maintains or enhances economic opportunity and community well-being while protecting and restoring the natural environment. The purpose of Earth Day Arbor Day celebration is to emphasize the importance of preserving our natural environment through sustainable activities such as recycling, waste reduction, and resource conservation. And whereas Burnsville recognizes the need to protect and preserve the beauty of our community by promoting good stewardship of our natural environment for future generations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 24th, 2020 as Earth Day and Arbor Day in the City of Burnsville. In celebration of Earth Day and Arbor Day this year, we had an online tree sale. And good news, probably bad news. We are already sold out. The trees will be delivered on Friday, April 24th. Thanks to everyone that helped to reforest our community, and we look forward to providing more trees next year. Proclaimed this 21st day of April 2020. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience or viewing who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the printed agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Does anyone wish to address the council? I believe that we already have people who would like to speak. I have a Dr. James Johnson who would like to address the council. Dr. Johnson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Dr. Johnson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I think you were just unmuted, so please proceed.
All right. I'm speaking at the behest of Linda Kramer. I'm an infectious disease physician at the VA Medical Center. I'm going to start my video. Yeah, I'm very involved in the COVID response locally at my institution, but to some extent statewide, because public health and infectious disease doctors are connected, weekly calls with the Department of Health and such. I understand there was a interest or a motion to close playgrounds and play structures in Burnsville, and that was put on hold or not acted on. So they, as I understand, remain open as of now. I support the notion of closing them throughout the state and throughout the country, actually, because I think they present an opportunity for children to congregate and have close contact with one another in a fairly uncontrolled situation, children from multiple households intermingling, and also touching and possibly getting their secretions on physical objects that would then be touched by other children with no opportunity to do appropriate cleaning of their hands or the structures. It's just physically unrealistic for parents or anyone supervising the kids to try to do that. The issue with that is that direct or close quarters person-to-person contact, but also contact with physical objects, even with no other person around, that has been contacted by another person in the recent past, hours, maybe even days, is a great way to transmit this virus, which we're learning is much more spreadable even than we previously realized. So everything that can be done to reduce the risk of transmission in any context is worthwhile pursuing. It's consistent with the governor's order for social distancing. Some people are aware that children have been relatively spared the disease of COVID, and the thought may be they don't have much, they're not involved in this epidemic, so what's the big deal? They may transmit it tremendously. They can become infected, they just don't become sick. And most people that have the virus do not show signs of sickness. That's true even for adults. It's probably even more so true for children. So healthy children doing whatever they do may well be spreading the virus, and they put others who then they come in contact with at risk. Their parents, the largest age group for COVID disease in Minnesota, would be the age of these children's parents, but the ones at greatest risk for getting sick and dying would be these children's grandparents. And I'm concerned right now because in my hospital, we're filling up with more and more COVID patients. It's stressing the hospital system. Patients are having a hard time getting in for other kinds of diseases, let alone COVID. And every additional case is a further stress on the healthcare system we're putting healthcare workers at risk. Actually, 16% of cases are in healthcare workers, mostly nurses who have direct contact with the patients. We don't have enough supplies to manage this. So this is not something that we can just say, well, the healthcare system will take care of it. We'll use appropriate precautions and so forth. This is a crisis, and everything that can be done will help. So I urge you to look at it from a public health perspective, and consider closing those playgrounds and playground play structures.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for appearing before us this evening and to sharing your thoughts. Thank you very much. I see that Mrs. Linda Kramer is also willing to speak. Mrs. Kramer, you are now being recognized.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. You can unmute yourself. Somehow we're not hearing Mrs. Kramer.
Okay.
Now she's unmuted. Okay, Mrs.
Is that
Kramer.
okay? All right.
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. And I know we don't have much time during citizens' comments, so I will try to keep my remarks brief regarding the closure of public play structures. You, as well as the city manager and police chief, received a rather lengthy memorandum from me last week. And for those on the line listening, it was a document identifying surrounding communities, including Eagan, Lakeville, Rosemount, and Savage, who have closed their play structures, as well as the city of St. Paul, Minneapolis Public Schools, our own school district 191, and Dakota County. This was in response, no doubt, to recommendations made by the WHO, the CDC, and the National Recreation and Parks Association. Finally, we provided photographic evidence of the closures of several play structures surrounding Burnsville. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for finding time in your busy schedule. I know you did a fair amount of research on this particular topic over the last several days, and I appreciate your taking time out to speak to our community. My ask is that a decision to close our public play structures be made tonight, following the council meeting, much like the decision was made to reopen it after the last work session. And I truly believe that leaving this topic unresolved or unaddressed for another 2 weeks before you may meet again is simply irresponsible. I know that's pretty harsh verbiage. I do plan on listening to the rest of the work session to see if a determination is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. And I am not seeing any other person in queue. So I thank you for Dr. Johnson and Mrs. Kramer. And now I will then move on to the next item. And the next item is additions to the final agenda. City Manager Lee.
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor.
No, okay, no emergency items to be added. Members of the council, do you have emergency items to be added to the agenda? Seeing no items, I will then move on. And the next item on the agenda is I'm trying to get back to my the next item on the agenda is, oh my, okay. Give me a minute, please. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. However, an item on the consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone watching who would like an item on the consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Ms. Lee, is there any items that staff would like to be removed for a separate discussion and vote?
No, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council, does anyone want an item on the consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? May I then have a motion, please, to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Councilmember Gustafson makes
Second.
the motion. Second by Councilmember Keeley.
It was reversed.
Pardon me?
It was reversed. Councilmember Keating made the motion.
They confuse us all the time.
I know.
Yeah.
We look alike.
I'm looking and I see one was muted and the other one wasn't. So the clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Gustafson,
Aye.
Mayor Couts,
Aye.
Councilmember Keeley,
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz.
Yes.
Councilmember Workman.
Unmute.
Aye.
Seeing all members of the council voting in the positive, the item passes. We now move on to the one item on the regular agenda. And the item on the regular agenda is a public hearing. And this is a resolution giving preliminary approval for the issuance of our general obligation capital improvement plan bonds and the adoption of the 2020-2024 facilities capital improvement plan. Presenting this evening is our new Director of Finance, Jennifer Rohde. Ms. Rohde, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. The item before you tonight is procedural in nature and is giving preliminary approval to move forward with planned CIP bonding later in the fall for construction of Fire Station 1. Next slide, please. First, I'll give a little background. In 2015, a citywide facility study was conducted. As part of that study, the City Council considered a multi-phased plan to improve various city facilities. Starting in 2017, this facilities plan has been incorporated into the annual budget and capital improvement process. Fire Station 1 at that time was determined to be at the end of its useful life as part of the citywide facility space needs assessment and has been included in the city's 2020 adopted budget and 2020 through 2024 adopted capital improvement plan. Utility franchise fees were dedicated to the facilities fund to fund improvements. The 5-year finance plan for the facilities fund includes a combination of use of cash funding from these revenue sources and bonding to finance the larger construction projects. Staff has reviewed bonding options and consulted with the city's financial advisor as well as bond counsel to determine available bonding options for facility improvements. The recommended bond structure is capital improvement plan bonding under the CIP Act. Next slide, please. The CIP Act, approved by the legislature in 2003, allows cities to issue municipal bonds under a capital improvement plan without the referendum requirement, except for a reverse referendum, which is described a little later. To issue bonds under the CIP Act, the City Council must follow an additional set of procedures. The CIP Act statutes require the Council to adopt a CIP specifically for the purposes of the improvements funded by the CIP bond. This CIP is attached to your background. This document only includes the improvements to be funded with CIP bonds. Annually, the city adopts a citywide CIP for all capital improvements during the annual budget process. The 2020 through 2024 CIP was adopted on December 3rd of 2019. The facilities plan was included within the citywide CIP and the 5-year financial plan. Within the 2020 Facilities Fund 5-year financial plan, $2.1 million was included in 2019 for purchase of the land for Fire Station 1 and preliminary planning and design to be funded with available cash on hand. Construction of the fire station was scheduled to begin in 2020 to be funded with bonds. The 2020 original budget of $14.6 million for the fire station replacement was based on the 2015 facility study. As planning and design for Fire Station 1 progressed, it became evident that a number of areas were not adequately addressed in the 2015 space needs assessment and 2016 schematic design. As a result of the planning process, and in order to meet current design principles, the project cost is estimated at $18.6 million. Council direction to modify the current Fire Station 1 replacement budget to $18.6 million was given at the February 11th, 2020 work session. Staff recommends preliminary approval for bonding for the 5-year period at $18.6 million. Fire Station 1 construction is planned to begin in 2020. Although the amount for Phase 3 Fire Station 2 and City Hall renovations is included in the attached CIP document for reference in year 5, the improvements are not currently covered in this preliminary approval. The council would need to give its approval for CIP bonding for this project in the future when cost estimates and funding needs can be more closely estimated. Debt service for the planned bonding was included in the 2020 adopted budget for the city's debt service funds and in the 2020 debt analysis. Annual debt service is to be funded from utility franchise fees. Next slide, please. Additionally, the CIP Act requires the City Council to consider 8 factors in preparing the CIP and authorizing general obligation bonds. The city has addressed the 8 points while developing the facility plan and during the 2020 budget process. The factors addressed are condition of the city's existing infrastructure, including projected need for repair or replacement, likely demand for the improvements, estimated cost of the improvements, available public resources, level of overlapping debt in the city, relative benefits and costs of alternative uses of funds, operating costs of the proposed improvements, and alternatives for providing services most efficiently through shared facilities with other cities or local governments. The city has considered the 8 points as they relate to the project identified above through issuance of CIP bonds, and the findings are included in the CIP document attached to the background. Next slide, please. The council must give preliminary approval for the sale of CIP bonds. However, issuance of the bonds is subject to a reverse referendum if a petition signed by voters equal to at least 5% of the votes cast in the city in the last general election is filed with the city clerk within 30 days after the public hearing regarding the bonds. The deadline for a petition to be filed is May 21st, 2020. If a petition is filed, the bonds may not be issued unless approved by the voters. After the CIP has been approved and general obligation bonds have been authorized, the city works with its municipal advisor to prepare a bond sale and repayment schedule within the 5-year plan. The city expects to issue bonds in the 3rd quarter of 2020, shortly after construction bids have been received for the Fire Station 1 project. The bonds can be sold up to the approved amount after the reverse referendum deadline, assuming no petition is filed. If costs are lower than expected and our construction bids are favorable, the bonding amount can be reduced. At this time, staff recommends approval of the facility's capital improvement plan and adoption of the resolution giving preliminary approval for the issuance of general obligation improvement plan bonds in an amount not to exceed $18.6 million for the 5-year period. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Rohde? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to address the council on this item? Anyone who wishes to address the council? I see no one in queue to address the council. I will now close the public hearing. Members of the council, may I have a vote, a motion?
Move to approve.
Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Sorry, I did the reverse on my mic. Sorry.
Councilmember Keeley seconds the motion. The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Gustafson,
Aye.
Mayor Couts,
Aye.
Councilmember Keeley,
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Workman.
Councilmember Workman, if you can unmute, please.
I don't see him anymore. We lost the video. I wonder if we lost audio as well.
I don't know. So let's see. I see a chat. He says that he was kicked out. Councilmember Workman, can you give us your vote on chat?
Aye.
There he is.
Oh, he's back, and he votes yes.
Sorry.
With the majority of the council, with a unanimous vote of the council, the item passes. Council members, there are no other items to come before us this evening, and a motion to adjourn is in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Gustafson,
Aye.
Mayor Couts,
Aye.
Councilmember Keeley,
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Workman.
Aye.
A unanimous vote of the council, the motion passes, and we stand adjourned.